so worth it whenever you have people around you that are not only like supportive of having a healthy mindset and culture around food, but then also kind of what I touched on earlier of eating together. I think those are two huge things that can help you and your team reach that greatness together.
Emily, I'll let you start by introducing who you are as the author of The Players Plate, an All-American track athlete, social media creator, and health advocate whose passion for sports nutrition began after a near fatal brush with hyponatremia. Did I say that correctly?
Exactly. The way that I would kind of best describe where I am now, I'm a track and cross country athlete at Duke University. I'm a senior this year, but I have another year of eligibility after that. And a couple of years ago, whenever COVID hit, I actually took a gap semester to start writing this book. And it was largely inspired by what you mentioned, hyponatremia. I had an incident with that my senior year of high school. I had been focusing on volleyball and basketball all the way up until my senior year. And was having a breakout season and was really excited for the state meet. I qualified for the first time. And the night before, I actually went into a coma. I was in the coma for 2 days, and it was extremely scary and, wasn't guaranteed that I would wake up from it. So that was a very big shaping opportunity for me, because at the time I had been eating extremely healthy and drinking a bunch of water. And honestly, from the outside looking in, it looked like I was like the picture of health. And yet I had this super dangerous situation happen to me because I drank too much water. So hyponatremia is whenever you are overhydrated and too low in sodium. And I had just gotten too low in sodium over a long bit of time, a month or two before that date. And it had just gotten to a point where it was too bad. My body literally couldn't function. And that was really what inspired me to write the book. A couple of years later, it took a couple of years to find the time. I took the gap semester and really get to work interviewing other athletes. But the main point of it is to help reshape the athletic world's definition of healthy and understand that, it's not just about eating chicken and broccoli. There are a bunch of other facets to our health that are extremely important when trying to fuel. And everyone is an athlete. It's not just for elite performers. We can obviously put ourselves in much more stressful situations, which is why it can become life-threatening whenever you are an elite athlete. But for anyone, there's a huge component of you making sure that you eat enough and you have a varied diet and you honor your cravings and different details like that are lost in people just saying, oh, I'm going to start eating healthy tomorrow. They think a lot of people associate that with restriction and dieting. And I really wanted to help interview these pro athletes and kind of share their stories and interview a bunch of registered dietitians and help the rest of the world that isn't in this hub where we have great resources understand that eating healthy it's not supposed to be restrictive. It's supposed to help you live a better life.
Yeah, food is fuel is the way I like to interpret
Exactly.
it. And we've had a couple of guests on recently, specifically Rachel McIntosh from Biosteel talks about the importance of hydration. Yeah. We've also had a couple of individuals who talk about, especially with women specifically, there's a lot of difficulties around how much you should be consuming. There's all of these social norms,
body image and social pressures. Whole chapter in the book about that topic and understanding how to deal with those pressures, and men and women.
Yeah, I mean, I say that not knowing what it's like as a female, but I know that there's pressures as a male as well that are out there. What are some of the chapters? I know, we've got this book here that's coming out in October. What should high school athletes understand about fueling for performance if they want to compete in college?
Yeah, so I guess kind of the different topics of the chapters, I'll kind of go through them really quickly. The first chapter is the importance of registered dietitians and understanding what that label is, understanding that a nutritionist isn't a title that is protected behind a bunch of schooling, and people who have the registered dietitian label have gone through so much work and research and whatnot to be able to have that. And they are definitely the number one resources whenever you are trying to improve your nutrition. And I'm not trying to say I'm a professional in this. I got all of what they had said and kind of compiled a bunch of different resources from what they had put out and different studies. I read a bunch of different studies that, I had had access to from following different registered dietitians, and had a registered dietitian look over the entire book. So it's like, I'm not trying to say I'm a professional. I'm merely like consolidating all the information into one place and making it more digestible for this younger generation to really be able to absorb the different lessons that they're sharing. So that's the first chapter. And then, after that, I interview these different pro athletes and tell their stories, but I ask them each what a like huge concept of sports nutrition was that they wish they had learned earlier in their career. And so each of them have their own chapter with one core sports nutrition concept coming out of it. And then a recipe at the end of that chapter, teaching you how to put into practice what you just learned. So I was really excited with how that layout ended up coming to fruition. It was kind of organic and kind of grew into that over the 2 years that I wrote it. And like a couple of examples, one of them, so Marshall Kozowski, he's a pitcher in the Los Angeles Dodgers organization. And when he started his collegiate career, he actually started at junior college pitching. And he ended up, getting the opportunity to pitch at U of H, which is a great baseball school. And then he was in a nearly fatal car crash. And he went through this super hard time of just trying to get back to normal health after this car crash that was nearly debilitating. And in that moment, he realized how incredible getting into a good routine and feeling yourself well and sleeping well was. And so in his chapter, I talk about this cross intersection between your fueling and your sleep and how like they can impact each other. And if you're not feeling well, it can impact your sleep, but also if you're not sleeping well, it can impact your fueling, and both of which are two huge pillars for our athletic performance and reaching our goals. So that's just kind of one of the examples of one of the lessons that I teach in the book. But the way that I think it really sets itself apart is that I'm teaching it through the story of Marshall. And like, he's talking about how he had different supplements that, he was told like magnesium was super huge for getting better sleep. And then I talk about my own personal experience with understanding if you don't get enough carbs, you're not going to sleep well at night. Carbs are huge for being able to have deep, sound sleep. And these little details, a lot of people don't know, but can be crucial in helping you reach your peak performance.
I love all of these details. I can't wait for everyone listening to read this book because I think it'll be incredible. It's kind of similar to what we're doing here with the Athletes Podcast and sharing those athletes' stories with a broader audience and educating that next generation, despite maybe what they were taught, during elementary, high school, whatever the case may be. There's so many misconceptions in the world of nutrition. And I think you're being pretty humble when you say you're not trying to teach everyone and you don't want to be like Emily. You've been featured in Forbes, the Business of College of Sports, the News and Observer. You got 160,000 followers on TikTok, 90,000 on Instagram. Like, you're doing all right. So I'd say people are clearly consuming and following along to what you say. Maybe I'm curious what your biggest piece would be if you were to extrapolate that one rule that you wish you knew maybe at 15, 16, 18 as a senior going through high school.
Yeah, so it's definitely hard to nail that down, but it's a great question. And I guess to give a little bit of context, I ate super unhealthy, like all throughout my life. And so that's why whenever I did start eating well, my senior year of high school, it was such a 180 and I was able to really feel the difference because I didn't care about getting 3 meals a day, just kind of ate snacks whenever and was like, had fast food all the time. And so it really changed my life whenever I started eating well and eating whole foods and cooking my own food. And I'm not saying like, being super restrictive, but I wish that it had been something that was more incorporated throughout my life, like earlier on, and that it was better communicated to me as a young athlete, how big of a difference eating enough protein and eating vegetables and making your own meals can be, and how pivotal that can be in your recovery and your performance. But at the same time, having a role model say that to me, and then also say, but you can still have ice cream. Like, this doesn't mean you can't enjoy the foods that you love or that your family has always cooked or the things that remind you of home. Those are different things. Like, I've got a chapter that is from Jesse Thomas, 2-time Ironman champ, ran at Stanford, absolute legend. He's co-founder of Picky Bars. And he talks a lot about the name of this chapter is Aim for a B+. And he talks about how he was super restrictive in college during his collegiate career, had dealt with a lot of body image issues and more like restrictive eating, and how that really limited his performance. And after discovering how he didn't need to be perfect all the time in his diet and really letting himself enjoy different things and not feeling like he had to be like a certain specific weight or eating this all of the time to perform well, was whenever he saw the most incredible performances and results from his work. And so his motto of like aim for a B+, I think is what I would love to get across to that next generation, is like, it's really, really important that you feel yourself well. And that can be something that you don't even realize is really helping you, but then you don't get sick as much and you don't get injured as much. And it's those little things that help you be more consistent as an athlete that can help you reach the really big goals.
Yeah, it's similar to that 80-20 rule, you know, trying to make sure that you're staying on track the majority of the time, right? I like that B+ analogy. I love that. You mentioned that you've been writing this for 2+ years. Is this something that you've always dreamed of doing, Emily? Is that like, was the book always goal to be an author?
You know, so whenever I started getting into nutrition my senior year, all my friends saw me cooking a bunch, and they had seen how much like my life had changed. I started focusing on running a lot better. And they're like, you should write a cookbook. You should write a cookbook. And so it actually did start out as a cookbook. And I have like pictures from 2018 of me, and I like, the idea I had for the title was athletes, like EATS at the end.
Nice.
And I had a bunch of recipes, but I couldn't figure out how to publish it. And I had Googled a bunch of different things about like self-publishing and trying to put out things like where there was like an online recipe book or things like that. And I just couldn't figure it out. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then whenever I did my gap semester, I actually didn't do it specifically to write the book, but then I ended up getting into one of these like little Discord chats of students who were taking gap semesters and gap years. And it was really cool because everyone was just sending resources into this, whether it was about internships or organizations you could join. And one of them was this program through Georgetown called the Creator Institute, where it's like a class and you pay whatever, $300 to be part of the class as a student. And they walk you through the book writing process from beginning to end. So whenever I saw that, I realized that I had this opportunity to kind of I had been so passionate by sports nutrition at this point. You know, I had read all these research articles already and just dove into the deep end and like loved speaking about it to other people. And the way my mom describes it is she's kind of like, I didn't even realize this until after I wrote the book, but it's so true. She's like, people who write books, it's like, it has to come out of you. Like, there's no way, like, it's just like bursting to come out of you. And it makes so much sense because there were several times I was writing the book and I was like, this sounds nothing like what I want to say. Like, this sounds terrible. If someone read this right now, they'd be like, Emily, why are you writing it? And, you know, that was like first draft of like 10, but you've got to get through those rough drafts. And one of the best quotes from the program I was in that I remember is them being like, great books aren't written, they're rewritten. And that really impacted me because I was just so excited about being able to share the importance of this huge pillar of athletic performance to the next generation. Whenever I literally remember being in high school and being like, why isn't there just an easy to read guide to sports nutrition for like kids my age? And that was really what inspired me to, you know, write that. And whenever I got the gap semester and had that opportunity, I knew that I couldn't pass it up.
This is incredible to listen to because I felt the same way about the fact that there wasn't a resource out there for athletes, younger generations specifically, to learn from people who have done it, people who had gone through, lived 10, 20 years in pro sport, amateur sport, whatever the case may be. And it seems like we've got some alignment in our goals here. Emily, I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation. I'm curious if you were to put a finger on maybe that pivotal moment for you growing up. Obviously, you had this health scare, but you were a pretty incredible athlete prior to that. And then, you know, this collegiate running career was a possibility. You qualified for state championships for the first time ever, and then you end up in this coma. Prior to that, what obstacles have you faced? What obstacles have you faced since then that you've been able to overcome and say, hey, like, this is nothing. I can overcome anything at this point?
That's a great question. And I would definitely say, so in high school, I didn't, like I touched on this before, but I didn't understand anything about nutrition. I also didn't really care about it. I seemed to be performing fine and was doing whatever I wanted. And that was something that I feel like a lot of athletes, when you're younger, you can kind of feel like, it's not really affecting. I don't feel like it's going to make that big of a difference. I ate a salad yesterday and I didn't feel better. So why would I start eating healthy?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the mindset. And, I think that whenever I got into college, I was writing this book and I was super passionate about sports nutrition and sleep. I still am like a huge proponent of sleep and getting on a consistent schedule. I thoroughly respect how important it is to living a better and happier, more successful life. And yet I was not performing well at all. And in college, I had this great senior year of high school. And then I got to college and it was like, I was doing all of the things that I was supposed to do. And I felt terrible when I was racing. And I was like, it's hard for me to continue to believe what I'm saying whenever I myself am not able to like reach the accomplishments that even like the little things of just having a good race and feeling proud of it afterwards. I had a really hard time with that. And I didn't really know what was going on. And then long story short, last year I had a really hard cross country season. I was in like the best shape of my life and my workouts were going incredible. And I was super excited every time I got to the line for a race. And then like halfway through it, 3K, I actually almost passed out. Like I would just start seeing stars. And I'm like, okay, it's happening. And my legs would like turn to cement. Like I remember regionals, I was in the like top pack or whatever until halfway, which to be fair, I know is like very possible to hammer the first half and then dive for the second half, but that's not what I was doing. Like I felt okay. And then all of a sudden I couldn't run anymore. And so it was like the last K of regionals last year. It took everything I had to just continue standing, like stay on my feet. I was like, this is not normal. So I got back to campus and, I reached out to the doctors. I was like, something is wrong. Let's do some tests. Like, please help me figure this out. And, for a lot of runners, people have issues with like iron or vitamin D deficiencies, like things like that. But I've always been super good about obviously nutrition and supplementing. And like, I felt like I was doing everything right, but come to find out I actually have celiac disease. So that is a condition. It's an autoimmune disease where whenever you have gluten, it destroys the villi inside your stomach. So you can't absorb any nutrients. So it's also super inflammatory. And so essentially I wasn't actually eating a lot of gluten throughout the week because I was eating, sweet potatoes and rice and things like that. But then the night before every meet, we would cater pasta and I'd have a giant bowl of pasta, which is why my red blood cells were literally in flames. Like whenever I got my tests done, that was the biggest thing that was a flag. They're like, wait, we should probably get tested for celiac because I had macrocytosis, which is where your red blood cells are enlarged and it allows you to carry less oxygen. It's like, oh wait, this makes a lot of sense of why half of the race I was like dying, but my workouts were still doing okay because it was like a very acute thing. And it causes you to become very malnourished whenever you aren't able to absorb the nutrients from the food you're eating. So that was the big like aha moment that I had last year after cross country and why I was able to have such a successful track season, because I finally figured out this like last piece to my puzzle. And that's actually the conclusion to my book. In the conclusion, I kind of talk about how your story is ever evolving. And the most important thing on your sports nutrition journey is keeping an open mind, because there will always be new research articles that come out that, contradict the ones that came out last month. And your body is changing, your needs will be changing as you age too. And if you ever feel like, you've got it figured out and everything about sports nutrition, you should probably look in the mirror and be like, I definitely still have some room to grow and room to learn, because it's just an ever evolving process. And I was like, look, I've been writing this entire book for the past 2 years and not able to see and not know this huge piece of my story that I had celiac disease. And that made such a huge difference in my career. You know, I like last season, I can talk more a little bit about that track season later, but it was pretty magical. And it was cool that I got to talk about that in the conclusion of my book, to be like, look, it's going to take some time, and it's going to take consistency and like work to figure out what works best for you, because nutrition is so individualized and unique to every different person, but it's so worth it once you do figure out what works best for you.
That's the key to everything, right? Is figuring out what works best for you. You articulated it well there. And I think like Jordan Shallow, who was episode 125 on this 126. Anyway, he's you're 143. So, you know, we're trying to keep track. But it comes down to like playing the man or woman, whoever it is. It's your body's unique. It's different than my body, and it's different from Joe Blow's down the street. And at the end of the day, unless you're getting tested, unless you're figuring out what works best for you, you're not going to know the ideal state that your body's going to feel. And Dr. Callum Cowan, another guy who we've had on the show, says, he's like, no one actually knows how good their body's supposed to feel until they get to that state. And it's crazy because people will go their whole lives. Even like you said, nighttime routine, even throwing on blue light blocking glasses. I'm curious, I know you're huge on TikTok. Let's talk about TikTok. Maybe take us through a day in your life and what your content looks like, how you're training. You've got crazy amount of kilometers, miles in your case, that you're putting on a daily basis. Maybe take us through that day in the life for Emily Cole.
Yeah, for sure. So TikTok is definitely something that it's the platform that I like to have the most fun on and kind of show like more of my personality. One of the biggest things I like to do is, you know, do like a vlog through a run, or like, you know, the snack plate before a run, or different things like that. And I don't know, I feel like TikTok is such an enigma, because it's like, you know, one day you feel like you understand it and then the next day you don't. And it's such a cool place, because whenever I first started out, it's because my older sister is a country music artist in Nashville, and she has to do social media for her career. And she's like, Emily, you have to get on TikTok, like sharing the behind the scenes of your life as a student athlete. People would love to see that and follow along. And you like wouldn't even really have to do that much besides to share what you're doing, and people would love to see it. And she tried to convince me for like 6 months. Finally, I end up getting on it, whatever, a year and a half ago. And it has definitely changed my life. You know, I wouldn't have nearly the amount of opportunities that I do now because of it. And it's crazy because a lot of it has just been super fun. I think I'm very grateful that I enjoy sharing my story, and I really do enjoy putting out social media content. I love the process of like putting together a video and like putting in the time to see it, and then seeing the final product come to fruition, and then seeing other people enjoy it. And that's very rewarding for me. Whereas I feel like a lot of social media people, if they make it their only thing, can get very wrapped up in it and feel like it's more of work and a job and stop enjoying it. And I don't know how to articulate it, but people can tell when you're not enjoying the content you're creating, and they won't watch it. And then it's even worse. So it's like, I think that's what's been really cool for me, is that I've never had TikTok be my number one thing. I just kind of do it to document the other parts of my life that are really what is driving me and giving me like my self-worth, and I like really enjoy doing. And so it's awesome when I have, you know, TikToks blowing up, but I think that having it as kind of a side thing has been extremely good for my mental health, and especially my like athletic career, because it's a great way to like de-stress and have fun and also connect with their athletes. I've made so many friends just because of my presence on social media with athletes across the country.
I love hearing that. It sounds like you've got TikTok down to a science. I know you're saying you figure out one day. I'm curious, were you able to find your prom date?
Oh my God. So my formal date. Yeah.
Formal, my bad. American, US, Canadian, you know.
No, you're so good. Yeah. So I put out a TikTok asking, it was like honestly a joke, saying I needed a formal date to my track formal for Duke. And this guy actually ended up responding, who plays lacrosse at Ohio State. His name is Mitchell Pelkey, and it ended up blowing up. And he got, you know, millions of views on his response video. And I thought it was like just a joke at first, but then I started talking to my friends, and I was like, honestly, it'd be really fun if you actually did come. So I responded back, and we ended up FaceTiming for a little bit and like actually getting to whatever, know each other with quotations. Like, I don't know how much you can get to know someone over FaceTime, but it was so fun. And he actually ended up coming to Duke for the formal. And it was such a fun experience. We made a bunch of TikToks together and they all blew up. We ended up going to New York together, like a month later ish, to be on, I'm blanking on the name right now, but the show, anyways, in New York City. And
no big deal.
it was like, anyways. So I don't know. It was just such a unique experience. And it's so cool because we're still both great friends. And like, that's such a unique experience that no one else can relate to. So I don't know. That was really fun. And that was definitely like the biggest thing that kind of got my page out to people.
Is that what your sister intended on you doing when she said for you to get on TikTok?
Definitely not. Definitely not. No, but it was just funny because I had posted this videos, like it was something I had recorded like a couple of months earlier with just like a sound and me not even talking. And I just put text on it that had to do with the formal, just expecting it to like do nothing. And I feel like that's how most of the videos that end up blowing up do, is like, you're like, oh, this is just like this, you put like zero effort into it. And then all of a sudden it like actually changes your life. It was crazy, but it was really fun.
I think that's one of the parts that I wanted to highlight about TikTok, specifically in your case. Like, it can change your life. And a lot of athletes have this opportunity in front of them right now to document their journey, take advantage of this free platform that can spread out what you're doing to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people on a daily basis. And you're a case study of it. And now you're the first athlete under NIL to release a book. Like, how does that make you feel? Are your parents proud? Are your sisters proud? Like, I'm curious how your family's all taking this in.
Well, my family they're literally my best friends. I am so grateful for them. And so they are the best about, telling me how proud they are like every day. We all hype each other up all the time. I think it's really cool how we're all like, it's just a power squad and we are all doing such great things, but in our own little avenues of the world. And so it's really easy for us all to like support each other and just be each other's biggest fans. I'm extremely grateful for them. I think that, being the first athlete to publish a book with name, image, and likeness, I think the best part about it for me is that was never the intention. I didn't write the book knowing that name, image, likeness laws were going to be changed. I thought that I wouldn't be able to talk about my Duke experience. And as I heard that the laws were going to change, then I realized I could include more in the book that would, pertain to the new things that were allowed. But I was just like, I am so honored to be able to have that and excited that it's going to help propel this book, because it's not even like I'm writing a book about like, my high school drama. Like, this is something that can really help people and change young athletes' lives, which makes my heart so happy, because that's like my main goal, is to get it out to as many people as possible. And I know that whenever I get to hold the first copy of it, I'm going to literally cry. Like, whenever I get to hold it in my hands, which should be soon. I don't know, in like a few weeks-ish, I'll get to hold my first one. But basically, I don't know. I just feel like this journey has helped me realize how cool of an opportunity we all have as student athletes to make a difference and talk about things that we're passionate about and really make change for the next generation. And kind of like what you touched on with the different platforms allowing you to get out to so many different people. This is an opportunity that, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. We are at the like crux of TikTok being a free platform and blowing up and providing all these opportunities. And I know that it is changing several other people's lives as well. And I know whenever you're trying to start out on social media, it can be hard. If like your first things you're posting get like 5 views and like, I feel like I'm talking to an abyss. But just remember that everyone had to start there. Everybody had to start from that point. And it's the people who kind of push through it and can continue putting out content that are able to really build a following. And it's so worth it, because now I've built something that I can get a career off of and really build my life off of after building this brand and this audience for myself. And I'm not going to lie, it makes it kind of hard to focus in class, because why am I majoring in computer science right now? But it does all end up coming together.
Well, I was going to ask about that at some point, like computer science, nutrition, like how are you combining the two? What are you doing? What are your plans after Duke University?
Yeah. So I would love to run professionally for a little bit, but I guess my computer science degree, I have always loved math. I love math, and coding has always been so fascinating to me because it is like problem solving. It's like, the little mind games that you'd play as a kid. It's kind of like that every assignment. And now I'm into the upper level classes that are not as fun as those little mind games. But I'm definitely like, my biggest goal is to be able to be at the crux of like health tech that can help people better understand their needs and nutrition and health. Obviously, I'm super passionate about nutrition. I'm majoring in computer science. If I could somehow be a part of some company that's helping people better understand themselves, because I've felt how big of a difference having proper nutrition makes in my life and my happiness. And I want everyone to be able to feel that. And in the right way, not being like, super restrictive and thinking that they have to do X, X, and X like everybody else, understanding their personal needs. And I know that machine learning is definitely the way that it's going to start bringing more of these answers to this complex world of nutrition. So I'm doing a major in computer science, the focus in machine learning. And that also ties into social media. I mean, social media platforms are using machine learning all the time to figure out what you want to watch and different things like ads to target. And I think that understanding that technology can only help me from now on. And though I don't want to be the person coding in the back of the room for the rest of my life, I am really excited to be able to have that knowledge going into this next step of my life.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have another conversation, Emily, because Jordan Maslin, the producer, website, do it all handyman, Jordan Maslin for the show, has a master's in computer science, specifically artificial intelligence. So I think you guys could learn a thing or two from together. And we have some plans down the road between an app, some other fun tech stuff. So we'll have to have another conversation around this opportunity, because I think there's there's a lot of aligning goals, objectives, aspirations, values. There we go. That was the word I was looking for. I appreciate you closing that out. Emily, what else should athletes be focusing on? I know we talked about like whether they should be looking a certain way. I know you have specific tips for utilizing nutrition to reach those athletic goals. How do people maybe find that confidence, or how did you find that confidence? What was your method? And then maybe others listening can apply that to their daily life.
Yep. So I will highlight one last chapter in the book, which is one where I interview Alan Lim, and he is an incredible guy. He's the founder of Scratch Labs. He has his PhD, and he worked on the Tour de France with these incredible elite cycling athletes, helping them better understand their nutrition and their performance. And in his chapter, he's actually written 3 cookbooks, and one of them is called A Fuel Zone Table. And it's about the importance of eating with others. And this is definitely a concept that I think is extremely important for all athletes to understand, because it's easy to get super passionate about, your performance and your health and your nutrition, and get super driven, and therefore start isolating yourself because, your friends are going to Whataburger, but you want to eat healthy. And it starts out as like just one meal, and then it ends up being a majority of the time for a lot of these elite athletes who think they need to have these perfect ratio of fats, protein, and carbs at every meal, and like measure everything out. And it's going to be, that little edge is going to be exactly what helps them at the end of the race. And it actually ends up being the opposite, that, there's a lot coming out now where athletes are speaking about their mental health and how incredibly important your mental health is for your performance. And having your meals with other people is one of the easiest ways to make sure that you're taking care of your mental health as an athlete, because you are able to, eating with others is one of the most bonding experiences you can have, especially when it's your teammates, the people who you're going out and fighting for and next to on the line or on the court or on the field. And whenever you have those little moments here and there building up, it builds up that trust, and it builds up that ability to push the edge because you're doing it for them and not for yourself whenever you're competing. And whenever you're starting to isolate yourself and be alone more, loneliness is one of the worst things you can do for your mental health. And like, even if you think that you're doing everything feeling wise perfectly, if you are not feeling fulfilled and happy and loved by the people around you, that can be just as detrimental to your performance as eating some super greasy fast food meal. Mm-hmm. So it's important to realize how you can't lose the importance of the people around you in this journey of sports nutrition and trying to reach your peak performance, and realize that it's something you can do, like bringing up the people around you rather than trying to embark on it yourself. Like, you can all do it together. And it's so much more fun to like have your team over and cook a meal together and, cook some dessert together rather than going and grabbing a super fast food from somewhere. Like, it's such a bonding experience too, in that way, whenever you kind of embark on that journey together. And I think kind of touching on the harder topics, like you talked about, whereas like body image and eating disorders and pressures, from societal pressures of what you should look like. Side note on that, one of the things I talk about in the book is how important it is for us to realize it's not just for female athletes, and how that kind of stereotype can lead male athletes who are struggling to there's like been research that has shown it takes them much longer to reach out and seek help, and they can actually get into a much worse state because it's so less socially accepted for them to be having food issues. And obviously there's a much bigger societal pressure for them to like be bigger and muscular and ripped and whatnot. And so there are so many other avenues and ways that we can all be affected by it. And one of the best things that you can do is opening up that conversation and that culture with your teammates and your coaches, and making it something that you're not afraid to talk about. Food and nutrition and being confident in your body, it's something that we all struggle with every day. And you can really relate and build strong relationships with other people around you whenever you're able to have those vulnerable conversations and realize that you're not alone, and being like, I wish that I looked differently in that picture of me racing. Like, who cares? You killed the race. You did amazing, So that's definitely that important piece of having this culture around you. You can put in work to help build that and manifest that for yourself. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's so worth it whenever you have people around you that are not only like supportive of having a healthy mindset and culture around food, but then also kind of what I touched on earlier of eating together. I think those are two huge things that can help you and your team reach that greatness together.
I love just the message that you've been sharing over the past 45 minutes. I'll be the first to admit, I went through a moment right at the beginning of COVID, March 2020, tried to get dialed in on the fitness, nutrition, health, lost a bunch of weight, tried to get all shredded, and like I was eating alone, and I probably was depressed. And like looking back, I'm like, that's something I didn't really reach out to anyone about. And I want to open this floor to, if there's ever anyone that wants to talk about it, like I'm always here to chat. I love talking. Clearly we're doing this. I feel like Emily, you'd be the same if there's anyone that wants to reach out. Like, I think there's an opportunity here for people who have a passion for sport, nutrition, health, to open their doors and share their knowledge. That's what you're doing here, sharing it with hundreds of thousands of people. I really appreciate what you're doing, Emily. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. The way we wrap up every episode is we ask our guests what their biggest piece of advice would be for the next generation of athletes. You've given like 42 pieces, so I want to maybe play twofold here. I'd love for you to share who your biggest inspiration was, what that piece of advice, whether it's from you, whether it's from someone who you've received, and then we'll wrap up by hearing where people can find you on social media.
I love it. Well, first of all, before I dive into that, thank you so much for having me. And I'm equally as impressed by you. I love, the different messages you're getting to put out and bringing these athletes' stories to the forefront. So many athletes have such incredible stories that people just don't know. And you're really helping to bring those to light. And I'm just really honored to be a part of that and impressed by you and the whole show. But
thank you.
Of course. So what was the first question again?
Who's that biggest inspiration? Who you modeling your career after? Is there that particular individual?
So this is very stereotypical runner here, but I read the Run Fast, Cook Fast, Eat Slow cookbooks, or Run Fast, Eat Slow cookbooks. And that was, you know, the first introduction I had to cooking my own food and understanding the importance of eating enough and not tracking, because they have a whole first section of the book that just talks about eating disorders and body image pressures and the importance of eating whole foods and getting in the kitchen rather than weighing your food and, you know, scanning all the packages so you can know your exact number of calories, because that will drain you. And, you know, the authors of that are obviously Shalane Flanagan and Elise Kopecky. And they were huge inspirations for me wanting to write this book. That's kind of like, I don't know, in addition to their message. It's like, yes, you should do all of these things, but it's also okay if you have a Rice Krispie treat before your run, because that's great fuel. I actually had one before my long run this morning, and the long run was great. And I have, you know, in my second chapter, I talk about the importance of getting into the kitchen, and I talk about how they were huge inspirations for me. And Elise Kopecky in particular talks about her struggles with amenorrhea. For those that don't know, REDS, relative energy deficiency syndrome, is a condition that every athlete can have, boy or girl, that is under fueling and isn't eating enough for their performance. They can start having hormone issues and really not able to, you know, recover well or perform well or train at all. And it's very highly correlated with stress factors and injuries. And she talks about how she struggled with amenorrhea for several years, which is the absence of a period. For those that don't know, that is like one of the telltale signs of underfueling for women. Mm-hmm. And whenever she shared that, that was something that, you know, in the beginning of the book, they talk about how it used to be like a pride thing if you were like losing weight and not eating enough. And now, you know, the culture has shifted, or people being like, no, like you need to be fueling enough. And I'm really grateful for all the different pro athletes like that are coming out and speaking about how fueling enough and taking, you know, dialing their training back has actually helped them reach their big goals. So to kind of get to the point here, I reached out to Elise Kopecky and asked her if she would give me a quote for the book. And she, you know, read it, and actually is one of the quotes on the back talking about how, you know, giving a recommendation and, you know, saying that people should read the book. And that was, you know, a very full circle moment for me, because she's been such an inspiration and she has done such a good job being such an incredible role model in the running world and athletic world of having the correct values around fueling and reaching your peak performance. So that was really cool for me to be able to have her kind of back up all the work that I've been doing over the past few years.
I love that. I have to ask, what's your favorite meal to cook with the team?
Actually, my favorite thing is spaghetti squash. So most people don't know what that is.
It's solid.
It's so underrated. And I don't understand why people don't have it more, but literally so first of all, it's super hard to like cut it. So I'll like microwave it for a bit to like soften it up. And then if you cut it in half and literally like bake the two halves in the oven, the inside of the squash turns into noodles. And so I'll make like my own pasta sauce with ground turkey and like maybe some rice and, or like normal pasta noodles, and kind of mix it all together with the spaghetti squash. And it is so good. And it's the easiest thing to serve for like a big crowd too. I feel like pasta is always a crowd pleaser. And obviously me being gluten-free now, it's perfect. I can also use like gluten-free noodles. There are plenty of options, but that is definitely my favorite go-to. And then for dessert, I'm a big brookie skillet girl. So like brownie and then cookie, like bake it in the oven and then ice cream on top. Wow, so good.
Dang, might have to try that one out. I love it. I love the crunch that spaghetti squash has too. It's just a little different texture. It's nice. It's nice. Emily Cole, thank you so much for coming on the Athletes Podcast. You have your own podcast debut in October. Your book comes out in September. Like, where can people find all of your information? Where can people find you on social media so that they can follow along your incredible journey?
Yes, for sure. So I am simply at Emily Cole on Instagram. This is the best place to kind of find all the other resources, but I have a new podcast that just launched called The Players Platform, and it's more like name, image, and likeness focused, sharing the different stories of how athletes are taking advantage of these new name, image, and likeness rules and using it to promote causes they're passionate about. And then I also have theplayersplate.com. That is where you can go. By the time this podcast is launched, it will either be available for pre-order or available for purchase. The ebook is launching next Tuesday from the date when we recorded this. So if the paper book isn't out yet, the ebook will be. And I'm really trying to get that out as soon as I can. I don't have an official launch date yet, but TikTok is at @EmilyColeE. And all of these different platforms are kind of great to just follow along. I like to share a lot about, my running journey and the book and just kind of life as a college athlete. So would love to, connect with any of you as well. Kind of like you mentioned, just if anyone wants to reach out about anything, I'm an open book. So please feel free to do so. And thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun to get to hang out and get to know you. And obviously so excited to get to connect later on in the future too. It sounds like we have a lot of things that are aligned, which is awesome.
Yeah, definitely some future topics to talk about. Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show. Can't wait to see your sister perform live in Nashville on our tour coming up next week. It's going to be a blast. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
You do too. Thank you.